People sometimes ask me, well, Rex, what do you have of Reams biological theory of ionization materials? And so I've decided, well, I'll just list them on the page. Let's see what I do have. I know I don't have a lot, but people do want to know so they can understand what I might be using and why I might be coming from certain directions at times. RBTI is rather famous for people squabbling over who's right, who's wrong, who's almost right, who's almost wrong, and instead of people coming together, quite often they're really prepared to become angry at one another. And I don't know if the system itself can survive endless squabbling, so my words are meant to soothe and calm and hope that people decide, okay, let's go at this in the right way and see if we can make it be better rather than to tear it apart. Yes, there'll be a lot of people that see this little film clip and they'll say, you don't have this and you don't have that. Well, sure. That's the purpose of putting it up, is so people can see what I do have. The more we can share information, the better the whole system is going to work. And I openly call to people, if you've got something I should see, something I can disseminate on the RBTI news group, get in touch with me and let me know about it so I can, even if I can't get the material from you, at least I can let other people know what's out there. You're looking at an early edition of a book by Dr. Sandy Bedok, which a book of this nature, I can't say whether it was a preprint manuscript or this particular book, but Dr. Reams was blind towards the end of his life, and his daughter has reported to me that she read this book to him cover to cover, and that he agreed with this book. He thought that this book probably was the best hope for RBTI to be given out to an ever-increasing circle of people. Now, there's various editions. I don't know the year this one is dated, but the Bedok family, that's Sandy and Jeannie, have a new one in the works. You're listening to this early part of 2006, and they're saying that the new book will be out soon. And I'm hopeful that the new book will correct a lot of defects in the old ones, the older issues, and that we can get moving forward with a single textbook that can help us all do the RBTI in a way that Reams himself would have approved of. This is just an appreciation page. Bedok, everybody acknowledges that Reams is the focal point of RBTI. He was the thinking machine that got it all in motion. I do want to point out that Reams was not born fully grown. There's always been healing mechanisms around. Reams is famous because he took some of the old natural healing methods and he applied soil science to it. This allows you to measure whether you're making things better or making things worse. And that is the genius of it. Here you have another short photo shot of a page out of the book. Again, it'll help you understand that Bedok always gave credits back to Reams as the man. This is a page about supplements. Now, Bedok's book has been faulted by others. There's no doubt about it. This faulting is not meant to destroy the book. The book itself is great. It's good. It helps you understand the theory of RBTI and how it works. But I've heard flat statements that if you followed the book it could kill you. Well, of course it can. Anything could kill you. But if you reread the book in a different light, you realize that if you're giving somebody supplements and the numbers are going in the wrong direction, they're moving away from perfect, then you have to re-look at what's in the book and reevaluate. So the book is a guideline. It's generalized. And some people think they're going to open Bedok's book up and suddenly be enlightened and suddenly have exactly the treatments that need to be taken. Not so. You have to go to those numbers, and you can call Bedok up on the phone and say, what do you think? He'll say, go by the numbers. That's what it's all about. Go by the numbers. This is the genius of RBTI. Go by the numbers. This, when you open a copy of the alphabetical reference manual, you'll see this page. And it gives you the background of how the manual came about. And basically, the Gardners, an elderly couple who are now dead, attended some of Reams' classes, and they made recordings of everything said. It was transcribed, put onto index cards, resorted in such a way that every little topic or subject that Reams talked about, the various parts of it are brought together. So essentially they made an alphabetical reference. And so if he's talking about anions, then all his comments about anions over these 5 classes, which these 5 classes here, and it's interesting because some people say it's taught in 9 classes, others say in 5, but it's the same material. It starts at one point and ends at another. But this is postgraduate work. This is not simple, easy to understand stuff. It requires deep thought. The manual is, oh, well, it's ugly on the outside. It's nothing but a spiral, not a spiral bone, a plastic comb bound booklet of about 130 pages. And you can find a whole lot of material in there that will give you an idea of what was Reams thinking about various concepts, particularly the concepts. So if you're going to do RBTI work, I recommend you have a copy of this book. Quite frankly, I don't know how you can do it without it. Dr. Joseph Manthe was one of Reams' students. Manthe's still alive, but he's not practicing RBTI these days. His work, his copyrighted work, has all been turned over to Mike and Sue Aberley in Missouri. And if people need to get access to his work, they're going to have to try to get in touch with the Aberleys. He broke his work into 4 distinct classes, sessions A, B, C, and D. Each session was anywhere from 100 to 130 pages of typed materials that was put in a very well laid out logical format. It's properly indexed, and these manuals are designed to be used in a classroom setting and go through them page by page. I do not know if people can just pick up the phone and order a copy, but if they can, I would recommend that they review this material, because it gives a whole different slant on the work you may have discussed or reviewed in Bedok's book. But again, I don't see how you can do the work without both parts. The world is awash in audio tapes of Reams' classes and also Dr. Manthe's classes. And many times they taught jointly together in the same classroom. You can look around and find these tapes anywhere you want to look. They're sold in different directions. You can get people to give them to you. These are just 4 tapes. There are literally hundreds of tapes out there, because these sessions lasted, some of them, a week, and many hours of recordings. Um, a few people have tried to organize the material to have indexes prepared, and I certainly applaud that. But if you look around, you will find a lot of material, and it's good material. It's all very serious, very well, very clear work. Not everyone is aware of Dr. Reams' history, but there is a chapter in this book that describes how he, as a crippled soldier from World War II, was miraculously healed. You cannot, and I repeat this over and over, you cannot fully understand the Reams biological theory of ionization without understanding Reams' Christian background. The two are together like a hand and a glove. And there is a chapter in this book that is well worth tracking down and reading, because it helps you understand why he was so dedicated in the directions that he went. There's a story that Carrie Reams wrote a book sometime back in the 30s. I've never come across a copy. Maybe somebody can bring it to the forefront. If they do, they can be sure there's no copyright problems, because the family has said over and over, no part of Carrie Wright's work is to be copyrighted if they have any effect on it. Now, that doesn't mean someone else can't copyright a book. In this case, we have Choose Life or Death. The book was written by Cliff Dudley, the publishing firm in Arkansas, and as best I can tell, and this is after talking to quite a few people, Cliff Dudley heard about the miraculous healings that can come about when you use the RBTI, and he linked up with Carrie Reams. Evidently went to Carrie's classes, listened to Carrie's quotes, packaged it all together, and ended up with a short book, 130 pages or so. Now, there is a RBTI practitioner in Tennessee, June Wiles, who bought the copyright from Cliff Dudley, and she has used that copyright almost like a hammer. We've got to be careful here, because she chose, for whatever reason, to put certain, well, a preface in some issues of this book. You'll notice this is a very old one. This one has the original preface as devised by Cliff Dudley, and if you can ever track down a copy of the old one, you will not want a copy of the new one. This is a much newer copy of Choose Life or Death, and the preface, which I'm going to try to show you a few slides, the preface gets lost in some mishmash about free radicals being alive creatures running around and trying to get us, and it does a tremendous disservice to Dr. Reams' work. Now, June Wiles students will get angry when they hear that, but so be it. That preface should not be in that book. It damages the book in many, many ways. Now, this is part of the preface out of Choose Life or Death. It describes how June went to Carrie Reams' funeral when he was interred in near Orlando. He had died in Pennsylvania, and they shipped the body back down. So she did go to the funeral, and she so speaks in here, if you can read it on a TV screen. This is the bizarre, and I do call it bizarre, well, this is the strange story of free radicals that June decided to put in the choose life or death, and that just disturbs almost everybody that sees it. It really has nothing to do with RBTI. This is a small booklet by Dr. Joseph C. Manthe, DC, 30 pages. Basically, it's describing some of the history of the RBTI. Mentions a lot of names in there that you're not going to pick up on in other directions, but it's worth tracking this down if you can get it. It gets into each part of the sugar reading, the pH reading, the various parts, and then the conclusions. It's a well done little booklet to help somebody understand what RBTI is all about. Here we have Dr. Bernard Jensen's Science and Practice of Iridology with charts. This is a serious textbook, 370 pages, fully indexed. Problem is that some people think that Reams got into iridology, and he actually didn't. What he did was he talked about the sclera of the eye, which is the white part of it, and how if the body was responding to the mineral changes in the diet, then it would start showing up in the sclera of the eye. So he did do an eye examination, but it was a very simple one. Did not get into this heavy-duty iridology, and those people that try to run the two together have never fully made their cases. This little chart has a history behind it, and it goes like this. I spotted this on the internet and said, whoa, this is a Reams chart. It tells you that if your pH, and there's two parts of it, I'll show you the other part in a moment. If the pH of the urine is such and such, then you should use such and such calcium. Whether you should use vitamin C or vitamin D, and it sounds like it's written by a Reams person. So I got in touch with the author and I said, did you study under Dr. Reams? He said, Dr. Who? And I found out that he had devised this chart from a book by Dr. Bernard Jensen. You just read or saw his iridology book. But Dr. Jensen's book called The Chemistry of Man. And he had put this together, and he insisted he had never heard of Reams. When I explained the story about Reams, he was fascinated, and I think he checked out more. But I just want to point out that this chart, and on this side you're looking at saliva pH, this chart was never done, or it was not done by a Reams student. It was done by a Bernard Jensen student, which doesn't mean Jensen didn't study with Reams. He may have, but it's just not, it's lost to history. The front of Dr. Manthe's Session A is Dr. Manthe's Session A is about 120 pages, and along with maybe 15 or 20 unpaginated sheets that try to index and help you understand answers to very tough questions that he poses in his classes. On this page you see two little profiles of living booklets by Dr. Bedok. The one on the left was done in '87. It's about 25 pages, I think. The one on the right was an updated version in '94, and it has about, I believe, 35 pages. Both of them are an introduction to Reams' biological theory of ionization. The RBTI is new thought in a world that's kind of bound up in medical red tape, and it draws people who think a little differently. Now here you're looking at a little book by a fellow named Nord Davis. 32 pages, 36 pages. And Nord got himself in a little trouble for, I think, for saying that maybe you shouldn't pay income taxes. Anyhow, he got involved in RBTI. When he heard about it with the classes being held there at the Blue Ridge Center in Georgia, he attended, and he really got carried away with everything that could be done. It turned around serious illness in his own life, and I think this book may say 100,000 or a couple 100,000 were sold. Yeah, more than 150,000 copies sold when this one was printed, and it kind of put the word around the country about the RBTI. So it was both good publicity, and of course it had some notoriety to it. But it's a good read. It gives a great description of how the RBTI works, and I personally am very glad that I have a copy and read it. Dr. Dan Scow was one of Dr. Reams' students, and Dr. Scow was a veterinarian, and he just naturally enough applied the RBTI concepts to livestock. And one of the things that Dr. Scow put out, and there'll be other work in here by him, is some more or less warnings about mycotoxins in livestock feed and forage. And it talks about how you're poisoning your animals without even realizing what you're doing. So you have to deal with the toxicity that you're putting in your animals if you want them to get well. And just about everything Dr. Scow says, if you just close your eyes a moment and think about the human body, you realize that it fits there as well. So it's always well worthwhile to pick up something by Dr. Scow and see what he had to say. This is a short booklet that Dr. Scow gives out to help people understand what soil testing is all about. And again, if you knew Dr. Reams, you know darn well he always talked about it. Unless you understood the food you were growing, you're surely not going to understand the health of the human. Dr. Bedok as well clearly understood this soil-human health connection, and so he put out his own books on farming. This is just a short introductory book that will lead you to his, he has a major book on farming that's designed along with that first big book we showed you in the front. He also has a gardening book, and he teaches gardening courses, and well he should, because I'm convinced there is no way to separate the two. Unless you understand gardening, you're just not going to truly understand human health. Gary Martin came to Blue Ridge and took some courses. He then went off, hung some new names on the RBTI, removed any reference to Dr. Reams' origination, and started selling the program under his own name. This is a book, I think, about 130, 150 pages. It doesn't even mention Reams. Doesn't mention the Reams biological theory of ionization. It's as though Reams didn't exist. I have had my troubles and run-ins with Dr. Martin, and I just would not recommend to anybody that they look in that direction. Dr. Scow was mentioned before. He's put out quite a few short booklets. These booklets are very helpful to farmers to understand just how chemistry affects energy. And I consider them very helpful to the RBTI student who wants to understand human health, because they kind of help you understand that if you don't have your chemistry in the right place, you'll never generate the energy to be well. It's the two go hand in glove. This short booklet is put out by Wiles. It looks like a diet book. When you open it up, you realize that it's the old acid alkaline routine. It really has precious little to do with the RBTI, but it's so interwoven that it's hard for the untrained mind to separate the facts from the fiction. Very difficult. It will take a while to describe everything over the next 4 or 5 slides, but here's the story. A fellow named Salem Curbin went to Blue Ridge in 1976, and he interviewed Dr. Reams. He was there to get a tune-up on his own health, but he interviewed Reams at great length. I believe we're going to see where the recordings are about 4 hours long, and he asked him every question that you could imagine. Problem was, Curbin did not have a scientific background, and so most of what Reams had to say to him kind of went over his head. But he did grasp the importance of the urine saliva test, and he became quite an advocate of it. So one of the things he did was write this book. Here's the back side of the book, and it describes, I'm holding it in my hand now looking at it. In one test of 10,000 terminally ill patients, only 5 failed to respond. If you want to know the story about RBTI, how it came about, how it had developed up to 1976, it's well worth reading this book. But you also can Curbin put the whole thing on the whole interview on a set of tapes, and I've listened to these tapes many times because you're listening to Dr. Reams talk where he's really trying to get his points across, and you're hearing some really good stuff. I wish I could loan out my set. I've talked to Curbin, and he now is trying to get $100 a set for this, which seems outrageous to me, but that's his choice. I know I'm not giving up my set easily. One part of understanding the Reams equation is called a range chart, and this kind of breaks down if perfect chemistry is in a certain quote range called range A, then if you shift into an acidic situation, you come into what's a different range. If you shift into an alkaline situation, you come into yet another range. Now these range charts, because people don't fully understand them, they try to publish their own and they get it all bungled up. You've got to be wary of range charts. The only one at this time that I'm really comfortable with, the only ones, are the one put out by Dr. Bedok, the one put out by Dr. Manthe, and another one which I don't have a clear copy of, put out by Dr. Chale and Waychop. But do be wary that you'll end up with, well, like Dr. Martin puts out a chart that implies that you can have pure acid in your veins. It's laughable, really, if you look at it. All I can say is be wary of any charts you pick up. Be sure somebody else has looked at it and said, yes, this is a good one. You can work with this. There are schools that teach alternative health. One such school, there are schools that teach the RBTI. Now this is a brochure put out by the Certified Natural Health Professional School, a fellow named Wendell Whitman. And he at one time employed Dr. Bedok to teach his classes. But then he started finagling around, and the Bedoks had to break off the relationship. Well, that didn't slow down Whitman. He had somebody come in to teach who had barely passed the level 1 class. I think there's 5 classes the Bedows teach. And he's done a disservice to people. There's a lot of anger towards the CNHP because first of all they're treating RBTI like it's just another modality, like instead of herbs we'll use RBTI. Doesn't work that way, folks. Once you learn RBTI, you'll realize that all other modalities really depend on that body chemistry too, and if they're not testing it, checking it, and keeping it in the right direction, in other words, going by the numbers, they're going to mess you up. This short booklet is put out by Sandy Bedok, 60 pages long. It's essentially an overall health manual, although it's founded and fundamentally part of the RBTI. It gets into a few other things. This is a little booklet put out by June Wiles, her RBTI Bion Institute something. It again gives you a background on most of what she had learned about the RBTI. But you have to understand that June sells supplements, a lot of them, and she tends to focus in that direction. I have not been that comfortable with what she does. She'll get angry as she hears what I have to say, but I have to be as honest as I can here. This story is not being written to annoy June Wiles or anybody else. It's being written to give my opinions on how I feel about things. This is a letter from June Wiles where she claims she was the last person with Carrie Reams before he was, quote, lowered to his final resting place outside Orlando, Florida. I think his family probably protests that a little bit, but yeah, she was evidently at the burial. The big question is, she also claims she was with him just before he died, and there are people that dispute that. Dr. Manthi's 26-page diet booklet is one of those little gems that has a multitude of goodies in it. If you can track a copy down, you may want to read it and review it. It's fascinating the number of people that took Dr. Reams' work and turned it into whatever they wanted to do. In Australia is a fella, Dr. Douglas Jesse, a homeopath. A homeopath uses water to treat things, so they call it energized water. I don't know. But when I heard that he was teaching the Reams RBTI, I took a class with him in Baltimore. And I guess I spent quite a bit of time arguing with him in that class because he kept insisting that there was simply no way to restore a body with good food. As he put it, if your body's out of whack, no amount of good food can make any difference. Okay, Dr. Jesse, what will make a difference? Oh, you need my homeopathic preparations. And he sold a lot of them. He also puts out his own methods of calculating reserve energy, which is probably a closer kept secret than the atomic bomb. And I, for a long time, thought that it was workable. I thought he had actually gotten it from Dr. Reams. I found out later that it would not match up with any of the known calculations that Dr. Reams performed personally, which kind of says, don't trust it. This is one of the manuals put out by a group called Christian Home Education Ministry. And it is a very loose copy. Now, this is my personal opinion, a very loose copy of Dr. Manthi's work. I have been unable to see that it has any originality in it at all. So you'll have to decide. I suggest you check with somebody else before you attend their classes, and be sure you can get a good recommendation. They're in Tennessee. Earlier we mentioned Dr. Whitman's organization, and I explore. I'm a researcher. I like to look up things, see what I can find. And I found out they were selling software to help people understand the RBTI. The software is supposed to do all the grunt work for you. So I contacted them, and I said, do you let people have a trial of this software? $700 software. Nope. I said, well, what can you do to help me understand if it would work for me? They provided me with a series of screen printouts. Now, I went through those screen printouts as best I could, and the more I did, the more confused I got. In my personal opinion, they don't work. There's just too many errors in there. I found errors in every direction I could look. It looks fancy, and I can see how it would impress a lot of people. But I must say, I am far less than impressed. Far less. One of Dr. Reams' success stories was Joanne Fontenot. She was a mighty suffering young lady, ended up in his care, and things got better. Things got better such that today she is still alive, still a deep family friend. But after she got well, she wrote a book. She went to all the classes, wrote a book, short book. Can't get the book anymore. Joanne claims, or she sent word that she's going to reissue the book, maybe even release it on the internet. And it's one of those heartwarming stories. I think everybody should try to track down a copy and read it. There are illegal copies on the internet, but she has not approved of those, so read them at your own peril. Medical doctors are trained by the drug establishment. They live and breathe and think drugs. Well, once you get into alternative healing, you realize that drugs only mask symptoms. It's kind of like cutting a wire to your fire alarm. Is to take a drug when you have a symptom. Yes, it'll stop the symptom. There's no doubt about it. Everybody agrees, doctors and all. But that doesn't mean that the underlying problem has been healed. That's what Kerry Reams was all about. He was trying to get to the cause as opposed to the effect. The effect would be the symptom. His followers, Reams himself was persecuted, thrown in jail. His followers run that same risk. But if they practice, if they do their consulting in certain narrow channels, they will not be so prone to get caught up in this practicing medicine without a license. Recently we came across a book by Dr. Lawrence Wilson that gets into this and gives you the background of why the laws are written as they are, to help you understand the law and to help you understand how to position yourself so that you won't get caught up in a bunch of, an FDA raid or a practicing medicine without a license raid by the state. So it's well worth getting a copy of this book. It's freely available. You can track it down without any problems at all. Well worth reading. Jim Daly took up with Reams and decided he would make all the mineral formulations that Reams recommended. And he did for many years. He still does. This is a 2005 catalog. You can get the original Reams formulations. Don't know if that'll be true forever. I do know that other people make supplements. Don't think for a moment they're all made by Daly. a few things about supplements. Reams wanted you to take your minerals with your meals, and he wanted them in powdered form. That means capsules. You'll very rarely find any pills in the Reams regime. He wanted it to burst open and mix up with those stomach contents and not get passed on through the gut and maybe dissolved by the time it's in the large bowel or something of that nature. So I buy daily products. They're inexpensive, they're good, they will do what they're supposed to do. Many people, like June Wiles, has hundreds of supplements. Reams only had about 6 or 8 total, and that covered all extremes. Basically, there was Mencol, there was vitamin D, a form of vitamin C. There's Algivim or Algazim, whichever you're talking about, and this is basically a seaweed harvested in Norway. Just minor minerals to try to shift that body chemistry where it's supposed to be. You get into some other, quote, RBTI, unquote, people's work, and you'll find hundreds of supplements. And you start realizing, wait a minute, they're thinking just like a drug doctor. They're trying to push drugs in a different direction. And they're using herbs and supplements to do the work of drugs. Timothy Ray is currently practicing, I don't even know what it's called, real-time functional medicine in the terrain. He claims that he has improved on the Reams work. I don't know that I agree with it. I'm not sure that a lot of people agree with it. But clearly he took the Reams work and he's trying to integrate several other factors in there. One of them being ORP, oxidation reduction potential. Some people have gone to Timothy Ray's work and they're satisfied with it. That's okay. But if you want to stay with the Reams work, don't be looking in his direction. It's not there. Here you see one page of the true preface for Choose Life or Death, the one written actually by Carrie Reams, or put together by Cliff Dudley with Carrie's help. It's worth reading. It's got a few simple rules in there that tell you more than you'll get out of a dozen other books. This is a range chart that shows you, let's see if we can describe this properly. That crosshatch mark is what's called the healing range. And so you have a place, it's like a little graph you use. You can plot in each of your figures from your lab analysis, your pH, your whatever, and you can, if you get it into that range, if they all fall in that range, you're known as in the healing range. You stay in that healing range long enough, you're going to get well. As a matter of fact, every day you stay in the healing range, you're going to be a stronger person than you were the day before. So that's what most RBTI people try to do, is to simply get you into the healing range. Your body's going to take care of things. It always has. It's going to in other words, cancers, things of that nature, they're going to resorb. And when they do, your regular medical doctor is going to say, well, we don't understand it, but your cancer has reversed. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Just get down, thank God. Say, I appreciate you building a body that will self-heal. It self-heals in the same way that when you cut yourself, no doctor can give you a drug and cause that cut to heal. It has to come from within, and it does. And appreciate it, because you can do the healing of every malady in the body is a mineral deficiency. The malady is what the body had to do to stay alive, and you're not looking at something out to get you like a wolf trying to jump on you or something. You're looking at what the body had to do to survive with a certain mineral deficiency. The RBTI reverses all that. This is the Clara chart. Can't even spell it. SCHLERA. This chart And by the way, this is put out by June Wiles. Very good chart. I have no problem with it. This chart, you look in somebody's eye and you can judge from where the congested blood vessels are just what's going on in the body to a certain degree. This is the back of the chart. Now here she's got into some standard old iridology, and nothing I found in any of the Reams materials leads me to believe that he really wanted to go in that direction. This is another Gary Martin book. I don't know where in the world he came up with that title. But again, he's trying to tell you all about the RBTI without ever saying the word RBTI. And what I've done here is to photograph the index to show you that Reams is not mentioned. The RBTI is not mentioned. The Reams biological theory and ionization is not on this earth, according to Gary Martin. Strange thing that he would take a little bit of work from a genius, try to convert it into his own, and never give any credits whatsoever. This is your basic nitrogen charts. You have two types of nitrogen that are in the body, that are in all living organizations. You got nitrate and, as Reams said, ammoniacal forms of nitrogen. And a great deal of your health depends on the quantity of this nitrogen and its relationship one to the other. As you study RBTI, there's this lights will go on, your eyes will open, you will say, oh my God, and you'll start thinking back in your own family. You'll think about so-and-so that died with a heart attack, or so-and-so that got cancer, and you'll say, there was no reason for that. That could have been changed. It could have been changed sometimes with as little as drinking the right amount of water. Just simple, little, just easy to do things that can change your health around in ways that a medical doctor will just dream about. He'll never quite understand it unless he takes up RBTI, which many have. This is a little chart that I use in my agricultural work that shows how you can predict when diseases and or insects are going to attack your crops. And I'm here to tell you, once you start realizing just how simple plant life works on this, you overlay it onto human health and you say, oh yes, this answers this, that answers that. There are no more real questions. It just comes clear to you. This is a mineral interrelationship chart. I am baffled how people can understand any kind of RBTI or plant science of any sort without understanding this. Some minerals suppress other minerals. Some minerals suppress several other minerals. Some minerals don't suppress anything. They're very easily suppressed by all other minerals. Where this chart came from, nobody knows. There's various versions. But essentially, you're back to the old thing like, well, if you take too much calcium, that affects magnesium. Or if you take magnesium, that affects the sulfate. Yes, all these things are true. But how do you get your head around all of them? Well, the easy way is to have one of these charts. Track one down. It's well worthwhile. There's hundreds of varieties on the internet. You'll understand a lot more once you understand how you can suppress certain minerals in your life by getting overdoses of other minerals. Kind of puts supplements in a new light. This is a Brix chart. Shows you the quality of fruits and vegetables based on their Brix reading. If you listen to Joe Manthe, he's going to tell you, you eat anything that's less than 10 Brix, you're harming your innards. I mean, this is a science all of its own. It's a simple, easy, cost-free way to measure the quality of fruits and vegetables. And if you start getting that quality up, you start changing what's happening in your body. People think that they can eat sawdust and it gives them the same effect as bread. It's not true. You've got to look into the quality of your food. At some point, you have to accept that. I think that may be why Salem Kerbin put together another little book called How to Eat Your Way Back to Vibrant Health. It's got a little tidbits that were drawn out from an interview with Dr. Reams, and it's intermixed with a bunch of recipes. It's kind of like a cookbook. It's intermixed with a lot of biblical stories. It's lightweight stuff, but it's worth reading. I'm glad I have a copy for sure. This is the back of the book. And again, this looks so much like that earlier book about Health Guide to Survival. I think Salem Kerbin liked to get his picture on the paper on the back with Dr. Reams. If you look at this, you'd think he's glad to be there. This is a pH chart showing a range of acceptance of various minerals by the body. I tend to disregard this type of chart, or at least look at it with a less than loving eye. One thing you got to understand is life forms can do a whole lot more than non-life forms. So when people say, well, you've got to have a certain pH to absorb a certain mineral, well, maybe yes, maybe no. That would be true in chemistry, but not always in biology. So when you see charts of this nature, do be a little bit wary. I've tried to show you just a few materials that are out there. Purpose is to help you understand whether you really want to move into this or not. I'm sure I have offended countless people. I have stepped on sacred toes. I have done everything to make everybody in the world mad, and all at me, all because I had something to say on the subject. I'm not an RBTI teacher. I am a researcher. I do use it personally. I do use it for my family. But I'm not a teacher. I'm trying to help those other people that want to learn more about it to know what materials are there, the names, the places they can go, the help they can get. But I must say that for the average person, a class is a must. Sure, you can get the book. You can get Bedok's book and read it, but you need a class. And if you really want to get into the advanced aspects of RBTI, you need more than one class. And I recommend taking classes from several teachers, because you can see the contrast in them that way. You'll end up a wise person who can help many people with simple little things like water drinking and lemon juice and a handful of minerals here or there. So I will do this story over and over. The stuff will hit the fan. As soon as the first few people see this, they'll be angry. Whenever they get over their anger and decide to work towards making RBTI help this whole world be a healthier place, then this is good. So yeah, go on and give me your best shot, and we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, I promise I'll come back and work on this as I can. It's an involved project, but it can help people, I believe.